2025, day 22 of the government shutdown. And I gotta be honest with you, the American people are starting to realize, whose shutdown it is. They're saying it's the Schumer shutdown, and the Democrats are on something, on a path that's the point of no return. Okay, and today we're going to talk about the parties never switched, and we're going to have these conversations about the parties never switching. We're going to debate about it. These are conversations we're going to have moving forward. These are conversations that the legacy media, the mainstream media is going to have. My subordinate, Stephen A. Smith, he's going to start talking about it because he's been following my lead. I appreciate you, brother. And it is what it is. The parties never switched. Day 22 of the government shutdown and the crashing out. And I'm going to leave that open because one of the parties are crashing out and they have reached the point of no return. And then I got, a little video that I'm going to share with you. We're going to watch some of the day 21 because right now we're live right now and they having a live presser right now, and I can't share their feed, but I can share some information from yesterday. And the information that was spoken on yesterday is basically breaking down what's really going on with the government, who's responsible for the shutdown, and do the Democrats really care about the American people? And they actually put names to these situations. And then I got to write this down because we're going to talk about the No Kings, real talk. So the No Kings protest over the weekend. Now, the only king that I know personally is King Jesus. Okay. So basically what No Kings meant to me is no God. And then when you look at the ideology of the Democratic Party, the party has no God. The Democratic Party is the party of the atheist. The Democratic Party is the party of the Illuminati, the Satanists and devil worshipers and, trans and everything outside of a God. So I could truly understand why they don't want no kings. Okay, because last time that I checked, Jesus is king. And I know a lady. Good morning. Good morning to you. Yeah, come on in. I got a good one lined up for you today. Be here for an hour or two, however long it takes me to get my point across, because I got to give you all some information. So when you have these conversations and these debates against these, the Democrats, you can shut them down because they like to talk about the party switch. The parties did not switch. And I'm going to break that down to you. And it's not even a theory. OK, it's a theorem. So when we look at the climate of the world, a house divided cannot stand. And we really got to be honest with ourselves of, pathway forward, what we going to do. Now, one of the wings got to go. OK, now, one thing that I do got to let you know that the American people are aligning themselves with the heart of the bird. OK, and I'm speaking metaphorically because they talk about the left wing, the far left wing, the far right wing, the MAGA extremists or the extremists. I'm talking about the wings of a bird that can actually be chopped off. And I'm broadcasting live from Los Angeles, California. OK, and like I said, and let me know where you're from. Somebody's in the chat asking where I'm from. I'm from LA, West Side. All right. So listen, the No Kings rallies over the weekend. Who funded them? What was the point? What was the intentions? What was the goal? And it seems like the powers that be, they somehow, some way, every year, find a way to politic or find a way to protest, because I thought the George Floyd, riots and all of that was, something was going to come out of it. But it was a way for the powers, principalities, evildoers in high places, okay, to basically spread their wealth. Because there are some individuals in this world that does not like the United States of America. And we got to address this. They're anti-American. And then there's a group of individuals in the United States of America who, they're anarchist, non-believers, and individuals who align themselves on the wrong side. So when I say America, a house divided cannot stand. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for the record, they're protecting their democracy when their democracy does not even exist, because the word democracy is not even in the Constitution. And America is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. And then they, used to say they go low, we go high. And there used to be, some morals and some ethics and things of that nature. But now there's no morals, there's no ethics, because in the state of California, in response to the gerrymandering that's going on in the state of Texas, the state of California has put a special election together and is spending billions of dollars to pretty much get Proposition 50 to pass. And based on the money that they're spending, Prop 50 is more than likely to pass, because I've seen, they brought out, the golden child, Barack Hussein Obama, and he's basically talking about a commercial. He's on the commercial talking about Proposition 50 as if it's something good. And, you got to pay attention, because the words mean a lot. Because he said Proposition 50 would preserve the independent body, down the road, meaning they're going to take away the independent body, that the Californians agreed to, and it's in terms of how to draw the lines and draw the maps from a congressional perspective in the state. And they basically are repealing that, and they're basically putting it in a situation where, 1, 2, maybe even 3 people tops can go into a back room and draw some maps to map out 3 to 4 or maybe even 5 congressional Democratic seats to balance the scales of what's going on in Texas. And when I say 2, 3, or 4 people, this is what you call extremists. Now, if I said MAGA extremists, that would be huge. But these are extremists. It is what it is. And somebody put in the comments about, Trump and Epstein. And I'm going to let you know today that the Epstein's files is not going to play out. Okay. Bill Clinton is mentioned more of having a relationship with Epstein, and they're going to bring him in. And then I think Prince, one of the, Prince, like I said, I don't have his name right now, but he's basically, denounced himself, meaning he's no longer a Prince anymore, because he's associated with the Epstein files. Richard Branson, the files, and the Republicans, even though that it is a shutdown, they are releasing information. So the Epstein's files and all that, these are just what we call smoke screens, because a lot of times, as people, they'll throw things out there and then they'll just go away, because right now the subject matter at hand is the day 22 on the government shutdown, and the Democrats continue to lie through their teeth. The Democrats are responsible for whatever happens after this. And I believe, that this is the crashing out moment of the party, because the people who fund these campaigns, this is their last draw. And I'm going to show you an Instagram video that was on my timeline within this hour about the people who actually funded the No Kings parades. And communism, Marxism, socialism. Communism, socialism equals Marxism. Okay, so now that the communist movement is pretty much showing itself for who it is in the Democratic Party. And that's one of the main reasons why the government is actually shut down, because Chuck Schumer back in March, he voted for the clean resolution to keep the government open. But for some strange reason, they put out some information and said, if you, negotiate with these Republicans, if you don't go get trillions of dollars so we can pay for, y'all could actually pay us back for the money we donated to your campaigns. And basically saying that the monies that they're, asking for, the $1.5 trillion, that's hush money, and that's money for the illegal immigrants. So this is the time where American citizens stand up and fight for the rights of their country. No disrespect to anybody. I'm a blood-born American citizen. My ancestors built this nation on free labor. And for me to sit back and see, signs say, immigrants built this nation, that is a lie. Immigrants did not, build this nation. Imports did. Okay, we was imported into the United States, and we conducted this free labor, and we're still dealing with these situations right now as I speak. But now is a time for us to have an opportunity, because when I say sanctification is just separating ourselves. So the black race as a whole, ran by the League of Black Men, are separating ourselves from the African Americans. We're separating ourselves from the sellouts. We're separating ourselves from the coons, the Sambos, the black church as a whole, because every culture, every race, every tribe, every creed fights for the rights of their people. And Gus Ward said, race baiter. No, this not as I'm not a race baiter. I'm not a victim, but America has a promissory note, that's due, past due, and they're going to have to pay that with interest. So when you look at me as a black man, and I guarantee you Gus Ward is a white man, when you look at me, there's some unsettled business that we got to figure out. Okay, because you got the Jewish Holocaust that happened overseas, and somehow they got money to establish Hollywood. They got money to establish their families. And then even in the Chinese, Korean, World War I, II, and all of this, they paid out reparations to these individuals. So basically, we just got to, settle this class action lawsuit, and we got to settle this. And within the next 3 months, it's going to be a wrap, meaning the Democratic Party is going to fall off the list. They will no longer exist a second after December 31st of 2025. So Project 2025 has done its job, and we're going to promote Project 2026. And that's pretty much to be specifically for the tribe of Judah, specifically for the children of Abraham, specifically for the descendants of the transatlantic slave. It is what it is. So, and that's the only way we can end racism. That's the only way we can end all of these things that's going on, because one nation under God, one race under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. This is the goal. But before we do that, the black man is tired of being tied between, the two horses that Willie Lynch so eloquently spoke of in the book or the transcripts of How to Make a Slave. And to keep it totally 100 with you, Willie Lynch said, you take the biggest, strongest, most aggressive slave. You put him in front of the entire plantation, his women and his children, pull him up front. You tie one limb to a horse. You tie another limb to another horse. And then you beat the horses. And then you rip the biggest, strongest, most aggressive protector in that particular community to shreds. And then they take the second one. And this is the science of Willie Lynch. And Joe Biden said, follow the science. And this is what he was talking about. And he basically said, take the next aggressive, the second aggressive slave, and then you beat him to a pulp, tar and feather him, but let him survive. So he'll be walking around wounded, walking around beaten, walking around broken. And the science of that is you have black women, or the Negro slave at the time. She has boys. She has sons. So what is she going to do? She's not going to raise her sons to be strongman. She's not going to raise her son to be aggressive. She's not going to raise her son to be a leader. She's going to raise him to be strong, but yet feeble-minded, because she don't want her son, her children, to have the same fate as that strong man. So fast forward to where we are right now. This is why the black race is so engorged in, my body, my rights, meaning let's kill our babies. This is why the black woman is she breeds envy. This is why she's breeding a group of black boys that can change to a group of black girls if they want to. She's raising them to be not smart, not wise. It is a terrible thing. So what I'm saying is we figured this out because my generation, which will be the greatest generation, which is Generation X, because the baby boomers have literally sold their souls and they're going to die in the wilderness because, based on the numbers, if you're 70, 80 years old, you're not trying to get to the mountaintop. You're going to try to be comfortable for what you have built. But this is why things are changing. Because when they talk about woke, no, it ain't about being woke. Woke is still sleep. Okay, I'm sure this morning somebody went to wake up their child to go to school. Hey, get up, boy. I'm woke. But they still in bed sleep. It's time to be awake. It's time to wake up. So now, we're wide awake. Now we are taking the advice of Barack Hussein Obama when he said build a coalition. So the coalitions, I'm going to go ahead and run them off. FBA. Foundational Black Americans, the Black Hebrew Israelites, okay, the 5% Nation, even the Jehovah's Witnesses is down. When I say Jehovah's Witnesses is down, this is politics because the Jehovah's Witnesses have the strongest missionary organization in the world. They go knocking on doors. So those are your door knockers. And I'm gonna go ahead and say the security of the whole brand is the Nation of Islam. And like I said, God is in control. And that's the factor of what we all agree on, which is God. And we use the Bible as the blueprint. And we use the United States Constitution as the paperwork. Because when the Democrats fall off this ledge, that they're being forced to walk off the plank, the black man is going to pick up the mantle and fight for the rights of everybody. Okay. And when I say fight for the rights of everybody, all y'all, everybody, one race under God, everybody, because once we get our condition together, once the black man start, taking care of his children, raising his boys to be men, raising his daughters to be smart, but yet wives, protecting his woman, this is what they pulled out when it came to dismantling the black nuclear family. And this is one of the plays that happened in the 60s when we was fighting for civil rights and everything. Okay. And it was all for the black people. Good morning to you. And somehow, some way, we signed a deal with, murdering babies, the Eugenics Society in terms of Planned Parenthood. We signed up with the Women's Live organizations. And that's the white liberal woman, which is the biggest threat to the world. Because that white woman will sit back and, work with the sister, give her an opportunity and make her think that that's her sister. But then that white woman will call her a nigga in a heartbeat. And then they'll be having fights. And if you want to do that, take a deep dive on Instagram and go search Karens. You see Karens all day. These are white liberal women, cat ladies, colored hair and earrings in their noses and all of this, drug addicts and individuals that somehow in my mind, they're trying to act like they're the new niggers, the hard ER, because nigger basically means ignorant. So these individuals out there on something dumb. And when I look at the No Kings rally, I've seen an individual that I respect, and she's a woman. She's a minister and wears a collar. And she posted a video on Instagram of herself at the No Kings parade in Long Beach, California, in the gay district, the Rainbow District of Long Beach. And she's running around in a costume talking about no kings. Because if there's no kings, then there can't be queens. And what race or what culture? What's up, king? Hey, queen, how you doing? So they basically is erasing themselves. Look at the long game. Just say, for instance, if the black man didn't wake up and 30 years down the road, we just let things just play out. And then somebody say, well, I believe in King Jesus, the king of all kings. They like, shut up. Ain't no king. They settled that in 2025. And you would think it was Project 2025, but no, it's the dumb liberals. And when I say the dumb liberals, meaning the liberals are the worst humans on the planet because they don't love themselves. First of all, you should love God with your heart, mind, and your soul. And if you could do that, you could love yourself. And if you love yourself, you can love your neighbor. But they're using these individuals to literally cancel out themselves. You got, women that's in their 70s, gave me a business card and had a pronoun on it. Oh, I'm an educator. I'm like, what? It didn't even exist when we was coming up. It didn't even exist. So what's the point? So they're using you to actually not only kill yourself, but kill your community. Think about that. They're using you to kill yourself and kill your community. So this is why we got to get back to the basics, because typically, if you read a good book, you might want to read it again. Now, the Bible, ended in the book of Revelations. But if you pick it back up and start off in the book of Genesis, then you'll see exactly what's going on, because Adam messed up. God didn't say nothing to Eve. Adam was supposed to, take Eve and, mentor her and groom her to be who she's supposed to be. But somehow, some way, she, got into an entanglement like Jada Pinkett talked about with the devil. And the devil used her to affect Adam. So Adam can't blame Eve for anything. So this is what we're doing. So if we are born again, that means we got to sanctify ourselves. So if we sanctified ourselves, that means we can't make the same mistake. So now, as a man, Eve is right there, participating in the No Kings parade. Eve is right there, aborting her children. Eve is right there, pushing an agenda and a narrative, and being just being the best Sadducee or the best scribe that she could be, because she is attached to the devil. And the only way she delivers herself is through repentance, just like the man did. Because God Almighty cried because his creation focused on everything else but him. And now we in 2025, going into 2026, and there's individuals that's in their hundreds, 90s, 80s, 70s that says, man, it's worse today than it was back then. And I had a conversation with older gentlemen. I said, how's it back? How's that? They basically told me we had ownership. We were segregated, but at least we had our own stores. We had our own dentists. We had our own grocery stores, cleaners, doctors, all of that. But since the desegregation, they literally burned and destroyed everything that we had, because they wanted us to basically serve them. And this is the climax of that today. And this is why it's sickening for a person to claim to love God, but somehow, some way participate in something that says no kings. And the no kings was what? It had nothing to do with Donald Trump, because if you don't like Donald Trump, just put his name on it. This was no kings parades. No kings, really. And the only king that I know is King Jesus. So when we look at this situation, and they always, the billionaires and all of that. Okay, but listen, the billionaires fund all of this nonsense. So how ignorant can we be? How ignorant can we be? And somebody put in the comments, stop being blasphemous. Oh, no. I'm quoting this Bible verbatim. In the book of Genesis, it says the children. And I'm speaking to, I don't even pronounce his name. See what I'm saying? I don't know where this person comes. Maybe he's a bot. But, the children of Abraham will be stolen from their land. To name one race of people in this world that was stolen from their homeland, that was taken to a foreign land that's not their own, and has been casted as slaves and has been oppressed the entire time. I'll wait. You're talking about transatlantic, which today is FBA, which is foundational Black Americans, meaning, we have solidified, our foundation. Now that our foundation is strong, now it's time to grow the brand, because we see an expiration of something that should not have been here. because when the Democratic Dixiecratic South separated from the Union to fight for the protection rights to keep slaves, meaning the Democratic Party fought to keep human beings as slaves, like cattle. And just like the gerrymandering, they was trying to, in terms of population, get congressional seats, and said that's why the 3/5 compromise came into effect, because how can we count them as a full human when they're literally cattle? When they're literally, something that you own. Okay. But now, as a full-fledged human being, this is when this thing happens. And the parties never switched. So I know a lot of you have conversations with people, and they'll say the party switched and convinced you and all of that. But when you really look at it, it's impossible for a party to switch. Now, a human being could switch, okay, but a party can't switch. So just from a metaphor perspective, say a murderer who have, murdered an individual and got life in prison. This individual been in prison for, 40 years. Okay. But they switched their mindset. But is that individual that's been convicted of a crime, life in prison, is that the same person? Yes, it is. He can't switch. He could change his mindset, meaning he can, find Islam or find Jesus in jail, but you are still that convicted criminal. Just like the Democratic Party. No matter what they say, the Democratic Party is still the party that separated from the United States of America, from the Union, to preserve slavery. Meaning the Democrats went against the federal government. Now, pay attention to what's going on today. The Democrats are going against the federal government. You see, before things end, the devil is he know what he's doing. He puts it out there in plain sight. And whoever figures it out, hey, it is what it is. At least somebody did. But here on the Better Black America TV, we have figured it out. We have figured it out. You got black governors. Black mayors, in LA, Bass, and they call her Commie Karen. Okay, we're going to talk about the Communist Party down the road, because the Communist Party was a major investor in this No Kings protest. Okay, that Brandon, the mayor of Chicago, these black people, it's like blackface. These are black people that represents something that they really don't understand. So the party switched. They got black mayors and black. Okay, that's fine. They switched a few people. But look at the ideology. Look at the root. They're still going against the federal government, just like they did when they wanted to keep slavery legal. Same thing. It's no switch. Oh, the Republicans, they do the Confederate flag. And okay, check this out. If you were just rock with me. We white Republicans, and we love this country. And then the party that we belong to decided to put black folk in charge. And then the black folk that's in charge appear to press the line and to go against everything that the Constitution talks about. So as a person, I'm going to switch to be a Republican. Why? Because they're investing in the slave. Just like somebody switched to be a Republican. Why? Because they're invested in killing babies. Just like somebody switched to Republican. Why? Just like they're investing in the immigrant. Just like somebody switched to Republican. Why? Because the Democratic Party is embracing communism, socialism, Marxism. Plain and in our face. But the party is still the party of slavery. the party of Jim Crow, the party of hanging and lynching, the party of the KKK, the party of the 94 crime bill. And why is it that the Democratic Party is the party that continue to hurt black Americans the most? Because they are so scared of black Americans. But they don't realize, like, we're not going to do to you what you did to us. Now, an African American will, but a black man that loves God, loves himself, and he's not going to do anything to his neighbor that he don't want his neighbor to do to him. So he's going to show you grace. So this is why, this moment in time and this moment in history, we got to figure this thing out. And I got a doctor in the house, and I need you to articulate your words and use better words to express yourself. Dr. Dolores Lemons, okay, Lemons, or whatever the case is. And typically when individuals, make insults, it's mad because you're telling the truth about them. Okay. It's mad that, you're telling people that they don't believe in God. They're mad because, these individuals are sleeping with the devil. Okay. The enemy from within. These individuals and their nonprofits that take any money from anybody to do anything. And that's sad. And that's sad. And I got my opinion on Diddy, and that's another podcast. But today I'm talking about the parties never switched. Day 22 in the shutdown, and the Democratic Party crashing out because they're forced to walk off the plank because it's over. There was a whole movement at the end of the Civil War, and it was called the Lost Cause. The Lost Cause. But somehow, some way, that assassin's bullet, just like they tried to blow Trump's head off, they didn't get him. That assassin's bullet, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Jackson, the VP at the time, pretty much cut the deal, put the black codes in place, put the Vagrancy Act of 1866, meaning every newly freed slave, when we catch you, we put a ball and chain on your ankle, and you forced to perform involuntary servitude for the rest of your natural life. And did you know that Proposition 6 in the state of California over the presidential elections on the ballot was Prop 6, and that was to end involuntary servitude in the state of California. But guess what? These dumb, ignorant, stupid, non-believing liberals, black ones, voted against it because somehow, some way, they just thought it meant something else. And then they wonder why the governor vetoed 6 reparations bills, because they're not going to pay no slaves. So now that the baby boomers are expiring, now that the baby boomers, are dying in the wilderness, the generation, the greatest generation ever to exist, Generation X, an unknown factor, we identifying who we are. We was lost because the baby boomers forced us, but now we found, and now it's time to change the game. And the game is going to change because all bad things come to an end. And the Democratic Party, it is what it is. And I think these say hi are the bots. I don't know, but I'm a human being. I'm not an AI. And I'm just speaking the truth to shame the devil, because the devil is a lie. And in 2025, we cannot continue to believe all these lies. No Kings rally. Pastors and preachers participating in no Kings when Jesus is king. The only king that I know. And the only reason, check this, the only reason that you guys are able to protest is because of our constitutional republic. If this was a monarchy, if Trump was king, he could shut it down and say you can't do that. But he can't do that. Okay? He can't do that because he's the president of the United States, and he's actually doing a pretty good job, when it comes to global affairs, when it comes to national security, when it comes to things that he ran on. He's doing a pretty good job. And what they don't know, 22 days of the government being shut down, if the government never opens, who gets the power of the legislative branch of the government? Meaning they canceled themselves out. So you got the executive branch and the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court. So the power goes to the president. So they are literally empowering the president to be bigger, stronger, greater than he could ever be. And he did not make up Make America Great Again. Bill Clinton said that. Together, we can make America great again. And that's fact. So America is getting back on track to being who she could possibly be. Okay. America will never be great if Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, don't pull themselves out of the construct of the party of slavery, the party of Jim Crow, the party of hanging and lynching, the party of the KKK, okay, the party of mass incarceration, and then now is coming out the party of Marxism, socialism, and communism. Look at any communist country around the world. And to my understanding, the reason why they put "In God We Trust" in the Senate is because of what was going on with Russia and all of that stuff back in the, in the 60s and 70s. So now we are a God-fearing constitutional republic, and we got to figure this thing out. And common sense is I've been starting to hear this word common sense. I mean, let's just be honest with ourselves. No kings, that means there's no God. King of all kings. Last time that I checked, Jesus is king. Kanye West tried to tell us about that, but he crazy because he had a sabbatical in the midst or at the peak of his entertainment career. And he basically went on record and said that the reason he left Rock Nation is because in the contract, the Rock Nation contract said that you can't talk about Jesus. And I remember driving down Manchester, when he was on tour and it was lit up and it said Jesus is king. And now all of a sudden, a few years later, we're participating in No Kings protest funded by communist, socialist, Marxist, and that's sad. So now, it is what it is. So the parties never switch. I will be willing to debate anybody on this. Because if you transfer from USC to UCLA, you still you, but the Trojans are still the Trojans and the Bruins are still the Bruins. Because USC is still USC, UCLA is still UCLA, even though they don't exist in the Pac-12 conference anymore. They still who they are. Their history is still there. Their Heisman, their legacy, their championships, all of that. So you mean to tell me that the Democrats switched to the Republicans, or did the people just slide over to the Republican side because the Democratic Party has went, too far away from God? Okay, because how can you be a Democrat and you be pro-life? How can you be a Democrat and you love humanity? How can you be a Democrat if you love God? Because if you love God, you're not going to participate in none of these things because it's called guilty by association. It's called guilty by association. So in the sense of speaking in parables, wise individuals, they hear things, and a lot of times I speak metaphorically, speak in parables because I'm allowing smart individuals to take what I'm saying and frame it and articulate it in a way that they could express themselves, because I know I'm not the only one, but you guys are going to have to be equipped, because the next time somebody say in your presence, oh no, the party switched, they use stop lying. Stop lying. The people switched. The party of slavery will always be the party of slavery. It's root causes. Okay. If the root is citrus, it will never, ever, ever, ever produce fiber. So let's have this conversation. And I guarantee you, nobody wants to debate, this fact, because I'm looking at our elected officials sell their souls. I'm looking at our elected officials, because it's day 22 in the shutdown, and they are at the point of no return. How are they going to come back from this? They want $1.5 trillion for migrants. Illegal aliens. That's bottom line. But just imagine, in a perfect world, in the world that, the black elected officials or the black people who are, Democrats, who've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, and running amok. Could you imagine if the government was shut down because they wanted $1.5 trillion for reparations? I mean, I'd have been at the protest speaking, MCing, doing whatever. But they're showing us who they really are, because it's an unwritten rule that they cannot support Black America because their mission is to erase us. And I believe Jamie Foxx got caught up in that situation because he did a movie on Netflix called They Cloned Tyrone. And They Cloned Tyrone basically talked about, in short, that in 2050 there would not be no existence of Black Americans. It'd be, a mixed breeds and whites and Hispanics, because the long play, according to Dr. Claude Anderson, by 2030, blackness don't even exist. And then it's the whites and Hispanics. Okay, that's the play. But God's people shall not perish due to the lack of knowledge. And today's the 22nd, so that's wisdom. So we got to have some wisdom and understand that, we are who we are. And Chat GPT will tell you who's the original creation of the Homo sapiens. I'm not talking about Neanderthals and animals. I'm talking about Homo sapiens, human beings. We created that. We're a Series 9 DNA, and you got two split sixes. One is the Mongolian and one is the white man, the Caucasian. Okay, so this is why they work together. You got the bronze medalists, the silver medalists working together to make sure that the kings don't step up, get that gold medal, and be at the top of their throne. It is what it is. But the jig is up. They're so worried about Project 2025, but didn't understand that Project 2026 is the move, because the Democratic Party is over. How is it that you have people in their 70s and 80s trying to lead anything? They're just trying to stay healthy and grateful that they wake up every day. Okay, anything could happen to anybody, but I'm just saying, it's timing is of the essence. And right now is a time where it's time for us to mount up. Okay, it's time for us to get on one accord. It's time for us to, do what God is calling us to do. And that's to separate ourselves and be the remnant of this world and stand in the gap just like Jesus did. Because in the book of Matthew, it says, he didn't come to change the scribe or the Pharisee. He came to fulfill, and he fulfilled what his cause was. So now we're filling the spot or the void that he left, because we not worried about what would Jesus do, because we got the book that says, what did he do? And he did not come to change the scribe or the Pharisee. He came to fulfill. So now we are the individuals that needs to calm down the temperature, speak to the Pharisees, speak to the scribe, aka Sadducees, and get them to understand. But the difference between the two, the scribe or the Sadducees has no God. Because King Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, and their biggest sin was sexual immorality, sexual immoral, homosexuals and the same, and pride and all of that. Think about it. But the Pharisees, they were no better because they were hypocritical, and those are your conservatives. But there is on record where Jesus, he didn't associate with the scribes or the Sadducees, but he went into the house of the Pharisees. He had debates with the Pharisees. He's preached to the Pharisees because it's easier, to connect with an individual that believes in something than it is an individual that has no morals. Okay, so we're dealing with God versus the devil, dark versus the light, positive versus negative, and right versus wrong. And the Democrats, they'll be willing to do and say anything because that party is wrong. And if you look at the root word of Democrat, the word demo is demon, diablo, or devil in El Espanol or Portuguese. And the word crat means to rule or rule by. It don't get no plainer than that. Talk to a Latino person. They'll say, oh, demonio. Yeah, demonio. Democrat. Okay. And there's not even a positive word that I can think of that start with the word D-E-M-O or the prefix D. Demo, defect, demoralized, demonish. Demon, D-E-M-O-N. You see what I'm saying? So it's right there And that's how the devil get down. He put it in your face and see who can figure it out and get a kick off of the individuals that can figure it out, because he knows that he could just turn and find some other clown to affect. But we got individuals who claim to be smart, the bourgeoisie, but they don't know that they're getting played. And I just want to know, where is the Divine Nine? I remember the Divine Nine, Stacey Abrams and all of them, they came out in droves. But all of a sudden, when it came to Trump and in the 2020 election, they fell back because they realized that they've been played. They've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, running them up. Where's our Congressional Black Caucus? Why is it that our one of our lead, congressional members is a wannabe hood rat named Jasmine Crockett? Okay, last time that I checked, we supposed to have class. We supposed to be the best in the business. We supposed to raise the bar, but they're playing to a vibration and a tune that's in the crab bucket. They're not trying to get to that next level. They're not trying to rise above the crowd. They're not trying to exit the crab bucket. They're not trying to connect and change. They're basically miserable victims that will pretty much kill themselves. Because when I say this, I'm saying a suicidal person, that's a killer. Okay, you got YNs running around, shooting and murdering, killing people, but these guys are suicidal. They'll be willing to do anything. If you're willing to kill somebody else, shoot yourself. Okay, I'm not a fan of suicide, but if you feel like you got to kill somebody, kill yourself, because it's not fair, for you to go out and crash out like that. And I'm using the word crash out because that's exactly what the Democratic Party is being forced to do right now before our eyes. Because it's a handful of individuals that's in control, that's funding that whole entire operation. And they got Chuck Schumer shutting down the government, and they call it the Schumer shutdown, because if he were to, make some concessions or to sign or to be in on the clear resolution or lobby the five Democrats that they need to open up the government, then, based on the no kings, he will be metaphorically, if he does that, be in my words, in their words exactly, he will be putting his head in the guillotine. They will literally chop his head off and find another individual that they will put their money behind to basically, take their seat or their position in Congress. You got these individuals who never had a regular job in their life, but they have enough power to get elected and then are powerful to get individuals to follow him, just like the individual that's running for the mayor of New York. They say he's a renowned, outspoken Marxist. And how is it that, we are sitting here in 2025 having to deal with something like this? And all I'm saying is what I do understand, and that, they put the whole weight, of the, that dark money behind this guy, but it's going to be an epic fail. Regardless if it does happen, but the power, that's when it comes to money, how they can actually just finance somebody's campaign and just put them in office and have them just do whatever. Because I seen a brother, in Congress, he got grilled because his nonprofit took some money from a company or an organization, and they ran off what the company that pretty much gave him the money, what they stood for. And he basically was like, wow, he didn't know how to answer it. But he basically said out of his mouth, we're not going to turn down, any, funds or grants or anything like that. And I'm sitting back and I'm saying, man, that's all money ain't good money. Sometimes, you got to take the low road, because low roads leads to high roads, and high roads leads to cliffs. And this is the cliff that the Democrats are literally going to fall off, because, their financiers or the evildoers in high places, or the individuals, the Communist Party, the Marxist Society, the Freemasons, whatever's behind this, they pretty much got their pawns, and they're going to make it happen. And it's crazy how Democrats always talk about, oh, this billionaire friends, okay, but your billionaire friends funds your campaign. Your billionaire friends fund No Kings protests. Your billionaire friends. So stop it. And right now we're in tax season, and Trump's big ugly bill, the big beautiful bill. I'm seeing individuals, being, taxes is being reduced, meaning they're getting more money back because the tax brackets have, gave savings to the working class. So if you're making under 107,000, you pretty much got a 17% raise from the federal government. And that's crazy. But people don't want to, what about the billionaire? What about your bank account? What about your power? What about your pocket? And somebody put in, why don't you run for office? Well, the time that I did, when you run for office, you don't work for you. Okay. Whatever your donors say, they give you speeches and scripts and stuff, so literally you got to sell your soul. Especially right now, to be a part of Republicans and Democrats, the Green Party, peace and freedom, and all of that. So if the climate changes and independence, people start resonating towards independence, absolutely, I'll run for an independent, absolutely. But these, the dark money, these individuals behind that's got you like a puppet, that's not cool. Okay, because to be a Democrat, just say, for instance, if you run as a Democrat, you literally got to, support abortion with no term limits, meaning you can abort the baby after the baby shower. Okay, you accept, transgender, everything, anything that comes under the sun, and you support open borders, and you will be willing to shut the government down and ask them to add $1.5 trillion because you got to either pay your donors off or you want free health care for illegal aliens. It is what it is, because the United States has never had an opportunity to become who she is. Okay. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, because the Democratic Party was so mad that the newly free slave enlisted in the Union Army, created the black regiments and the Buffalo Soldiers, and within 6 months defeated the Democratic Dixiecratic South. See, that's where they payback is. And when they say the party switched, no, the parties never switched. The people did. Because there's people switching parties right now. You can't say the Democratic Party switched, because if you look at Brandon Johnson in Chicago, I follow a female, and the group is Chicago Flips Red. So the party didn't change, the people did. So if you was a white Southerner and now you got the Democratic Party investing in civil rights and equality for the black man, okay, I'm gonna be a Republican now. Okay, but it is what it is. But this is the part that I really want y'all to understand. When they sit back and say, we got to stop this fascist, Trump is a fascist and all of that, right? So if I metaphorically, okay, speaking in parables, paraphrasing, if I, and I'm speaking on a street level, okay, if I came and said, man, I can't stand them Crips, man, them Crips get on my nerve, man, them damn Crips, you would just assume that I was in opposition of the Crips, and more than likely a blood. Okay. And vice versa. Man, I can't stand them naps, man. I can't stand them crabs, man. Oh, you must be a blood. You could assume that, and you would not be far away from the truth, because that's factual. So if these individuals saying we got to stop fascism, what does that mean? What's the opposition of fascism? You ready? Communism. So anytime you sit back and say Trump's a fascist, that means you claiming communism. Anytime you say Trump's a fascist, okay, you claiming communism. Okay. And then when you look at the No Kings, it's right there. It's the Communist Party of America, bruh. Let's keep it 100. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Tell me what black Republican is in office. Oh, you got a black Republican running for mayor of Virginia, governor of Virginia, Trump's HUD, urban housing development. He's a brother, former NFL player. Okay. You got Byron Donalds, Tim Scott. Okay. You got a lot. Okay. And Republicans for black just means conservative, meaning I love God, and I accept the fact that he made male and he made female. So XX and XY chromosomes. Okay. That's conservative. Okay. So I'm not sitting back and saying, go ahead and be a, Republican. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be a nonpartisan independent like I am. I'm not a Republican. I'm a nonpartisan independent. And I can't flip from Democrat to Republican because Jesus he flipped the table on the scribes and the Pharisees. But at least the Pharisees believed. That's the difference. Okay, when you look at the No Kings, man, I seen a cat coalition, meaning white women walking around with their face painted like cats and bodysuits, and they were walking around as cats. I look and I say, hey, how y'all doing? They meow. And then I looked to the other side and I seen dogs. They had chokers on, people acting like dogs. I seen devil worshipers, musicians, not musicians, magicians, magic, black magic. And then, come on. And then somehow, some way, a preacher, a man of God, aligns himself with that party. And I know it's for the money, but how can you align yourself with an atheist? How can you align yourself with a Satanist? How can you align yourself with a tranny? Okay. How can you align yourself with anything or any rudiment that has no God? So if you want them to miss it, put it in the first book of the Bible. And this is why after I finished Revelations, I opened it up and I looked in Genesis and said, man, what happened? Adam got played by Eve. Eve said that she was deceived by the devil. So basically, since God sacrificed his only begotten son, let's sacrifice Eve and say, you know what? Devil, take her, take everything that comes with her. It is what it is. Because it's a man thing, you don't understand it. Because if she wants to come back, she's going to have to do what every human being on this planet got to do if they're trying to make it into the kingdom. That's repent, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And let God be your boss. Let God be your guide. Let God be your king. Oh, you don't believe in kings. Okay. And last time I checked, Jesus is king. King of all kings, King of kings, Lord of lords. A name above every name, that every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess that Jesus is the Messiah, to glorify God Almighty. And it's crazy that I say this, and in the book of Hebrew, and in Hebrew language, there's not even any J's. Okay, so his original name is Yahweh. Okay, YHWH. Some say Yahshua and all of that, but it's Yahweh. YHWH. Okay, but he know who he is. Okay, and I'm sure, some of you that's on right now and got children and they call you dad, they call you mom, and, and all of that, paw, and diva and all of that, but you know who you are. So God know who he is. It is what it is. So Jesus is Lord. And that's, hey, King of all kings, Lord of all lords. Okay, King Jesus. Absolutely. So this is how we separate ourselves and sanctify ourselves, because the Democratic Party is crashing out and they're being forced to do this by their donors, because their donors know that, if they continue to allow these Democrats, to go along to get along, that they're just going to push the inevitable, further down the road, like kick the can. It is what it is. So now that they're crashing out, it's time for us to align ourselves as nonpartisan independents, meaning, we will get sucked up in the Republican Party. Like I said, I understand white supremacy and all that. I know how to code switch and all that, but we'll get more respect if we develop and organize outside of that, because how can we, get what's owed to us if we continue to join them? Okay. The newly freed slave, emancipated by Abraham Lincoln, participated in the Civil War to defeat the Dixiecratic Democratic South, who fought and who separated from this country to preserve slavery. So once they did that, they were embedded in on the Republican side and literally voted Republican all the way up to JFK. And JFK was the individual who was literally about to change the game. And you see what happened to him. The assassin's bullet. And then just like with Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Jackson, you got, Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson. You got the same thing going on right now. The same thing going on right now. Okay. And then when you look back with Kennedy, with his vice president was Lyndon B. Johnson, was the Dixiecratic governor of Texas. He said, I'm gonna have them niggas voting Democratic for the next 200 years. Because he said, I'm gonna give them everything they want. I'm gonna put them on. I'm gonna put them on my team, but I'm gonna give them their instructions. So it's literally, blackface. It's a black representative, but that black representative is protecting supremacy. This is why the Freemasons and all of these, secret societies have connected with the Divine Nine, because the Divine Nine members, they know the game and they'll be willing to do anything to be successful for themselves and their families, because they cannot, step outside the box and support their people unless they're not active. Now, if you active, you was at the No Kings rally. If you active, no term limits on abortion. If you active, we got to open the border up. We got to take care of the migrants. But if you just pledged when you was in college, just to, get a couple females or two, and then now you grown, rock with your people. Rock with your people. And Ms. Moss put you to say what happened. Give me a little more context so I know what you're talking about. But today's topics are, the parties never switched. It's day 22 in the Schumer shutdown, and the Democrats are being forced to crash out because of their negative approval rating, because there's no leadership. And if anybody knows who's the leader of the Democratic Party, like who would be the front runner, to run for president, it will not be. I believe that it will be a independent, that's going to challenge the Republicans. And the only way we can actually make this happen if we get some laws and legislation changed, because, the independents don't get a chance to vote in the primaries. So when you see all these primary elections and things, you're thinking like, the Democrat got a nice chance. But then the swing voters and the independents didn't, vote in the primaries because they don't have access to primary ballots, because that was another, rule or a clause that the Democrats made happen because they want to continue power, just like the gerrymandering thing. Now, if Proposition 50 passes, it's going to open the floodgates, because there are more red states than there are blue states, and all those red states are going to align themselves and rewrite. So you're talking about picking up 5 seats to match the 5 seats in Texas, but you probably going to be, it's going to be 22 more Republican seats if this thing happened. It is what it is. And if I'm telling a lie, put in the comments of what the truth is. Because you got individuals who, they sit around and watch your videos, and they sit back and watch. If you go an hour, they there the whole hour, but they ain't got nothing to say but negative stuff. So you must be entertaining to them, or they'll find something to do with themselves. Okay. So it is what it is. And then they want to have a conversation in the midst of as if hundreds of people are not paying attention right now. Knock it off. So ask a question, specifically, and I'll answer that question, but it's the crash out. Okay. The crash out is real. These Democrats are really, showing us who they are. And then, we act as if we got black representation, but I remember, because Hakeem Jeffries, he's a minority speaker, but, the Nation Islam used to call people with green eyes devils. But you got a black man, with green eyes in terms of Hakeem Jeffries. And I want him to grow his hair. And I guarantee you his hair is going to comb like a Caucasian. So the jig is up. They know how to pick them. This is why his mama named him Hakeem, when he looks like a Mike, a Tom, or a Baron, or Darren. Okay, because just this green-eyed so-called brother, who pretty much is the vocal and the lead for the party of slavery. They got this black man as the minority speaker speaking for the party of slavery. And watch this video and you will never even debate anymore about the party switch. No, it's just that there is a theorem now. The parties did never switch. Hakeem Jeffrey is the house Negro that's speaking for Massa on Massa's porch. No different than Stephen and Calvin Candy. And if you did not know, Stephen and Calvin Candy was Democrats from the state of Texas. True story. So when you got a black man speaking for the Democratic Party, he's pretty much has no soul, because he's not speaking for himself. He's speaking for the party of slavery. So if the party switched, so the Republicans was the party of slavery, the party of Jim Crow. Oh, the party's supposed to switch. So the Republicans was, Jim Crow. No. The party of mass incarceration, the 94 crime bill. Oh, the Republicans. No. Bill Clinton, Arkansas. Okay, president. He signed that 94 crime bill. Joseph Robinette Biden, Democrat, who pretty much pushed that in the Senate, who said that we need to be behind bars. The wife of the Democrat, Bill Clinton, said out of her mouth that I was a super predator. I'm not human. They're super predators and they need to be brought to heel. I mean, heel like dogs. They had a white woman named Hillary Clinton in her beautiful glory years on national television talking about the black man like that. And you know what the dumbest thing that ever happened? Black people voted for the 94 crime bill and locked up their own family. That's stupid, ignorant, and dumb. Just like Willie Lynch. Because, Grandmama don't want to lose her food stamps. Mama don't want to lose her Medicaid. Grandma don't want to, you see what I'm saying? So fear is the reason why blacks are so scared to stand up and tell the truth. But you looking at a man that has no fear. The only thing that I fear is God. Okay. And if you don't stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. So I'm standing on solid ground because my Lord and Savior have sanctified me and have given me the power and the authority to speak truth to power. See, now they don't say that no more because it was just a talking point. So now we get an opportunity to do it for real, and we're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen. As Chris put in the comments, no, talking about right now, today, tomorrow, and every day. Yes. Republicans or not, you are less than, admit that. No, well, I'm a nonpartisan, God-fearing, blood-born American citizen, and I'm a part of what we call the remnant. That makes me very special. I'm above all of that nonsense. The Republicans and Democrats, man, that's pretty much they deserve to be thrown on the ground and trampled upon men, because we are the salt of the earth. We are the flavor. Okay. And they know that, because this is why they want to control that, because if they don't erase us, then their mere existence doesn't even exist, And as a black man standing 6'3", 235 pounds, I have no inferior complex. I shake hands. I'll look you in your eyes and crack your knuckles and let you know what time it is. Because like I said, I'm just one man. Okay. And it's a whole lot of me's out there that we've been having these sidebar conversations. We've been having these think tanks that's standing and that feel and believe what I believe. Okay. And like I said, the Democratic Party is dead to us. And the last election, 13 million registered Democrats decided to not vote for Harris. They either voted down ballot or wrote in the candidate. And then you talk about no kings. See, no kings tell you what to do. So which party told us, okay, she going to be the Democratic nominee? A bedwenching concubine named Kamala Harris. She didn't win no primaries. She didn't earn our vote. So which dictatorship told us Vote for her. I'll wait. So what I'm saying is common sense. We got to have these conversations. We got to talk about it because the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. And when I say, it's time to step up and tell the truth and shame the devil, it is what it is. Because if Trump was a king, he would have stopped y'all protests and all that stuff. He put out a video and just pooped on y'all. And this is the first president that I've seen in my natural life that clapped back. He gonna say what he gonna say. It is what it is. The devil owns the church, Neon. The devil run it. And this is why I'm having this conversation with the people today to realize that it's each one teach one, that we all are responsible for us. Because first, you got to love God with your heart, mind, and your soul. Bump that church. Secondly, love your neighbors, you love yourself, meaning the more you love God, the more you're going to love yourself, because we are all gods. Okay. We're all gods, and Jesus is our king. So when they say no kings, they're saying no gods. And when I say we're all gods, it's lowercase g's. We're not the gods, but we are in the place to represent God. Okay. Because when you see me, you looking at a God. When I see you, I'm looking at a God or goddess. Okay. Because we are held to a different standard. We are held to a different standard. And that standard is going to rise because we're sacrificing our only begotten woman, and the devil can have her because the woman is the host to the man. And the black woman is, she's so power thirsty that she'll be willing to do whatever just to eat good and have some comfort. So this is why I'm challenging everybody, the Divine Nine, you Greeks and all of this stuff, because at the end of the day, if we don't fix it, we're going to be responsible for this history. What did the Americans do? What did Black America do in 2025? They no kings rallies, and we turn communists, and we go to college, but we ignorant now, and we be talking like Jasmine Crockett and Eric. Man, come on, man. It is what it is. And when I say fix it, meaning socially and economics, fix it, meaning, let's go ahead and divvy this country up. Give us our land, give us our money, give us our water, and let us live our lives the way we choose to live them, not the way you want us to. I'm so envious to Thousand Oaks in Ventura County. I'm so envious to South Orange County, how these white folks is living, But I'm in a sanctuary city in the hood, dealing with the YNs, the young shooter YNs, they Democrats, right? Because they mamas bred them, and they breed envy. They breed killers. And the government knows, or the Democratic Party knows, if you got a man in the house, he might do the right thing. So let's pretty much take the man out the house, do some things to him and get him all caught up. And then we'll have the woman going to work every day or getting our SNAP and our food stamps, and then send their children to that dumb, broke school that's not educating, who's pretty much is a precursor to a prison system. Because if you're not reading, math and arithmetic on the grade level by the time you're in the third or fourth grade, your life is going to be terrible. And I realized ditching in middle school and high school, the times that I did, that the average individual that ditched class was the individual that didn't do their homework. They couldn't read, they were dumb, they just didn't want to be embarrassed. Okay. Because I, by the grace of God, was an athlete and needed to be eligible. So I had to go to class regardless. So once I figured that out, I'm like, oh, okay, they're embarrassed. Okay, because, you go to school and in English class, everybody got to read, and you got two gangbangers, all in the hood, putting hands on people, but somehow, somewhere they head down and they sleep because they don't want to read because they can't. And then now the two individuals that I'm talking about, I know them personally, they both dead. They didn't make it past their 25th birthday, tormented the hood, and these are individuals that I know personally. So now when I say fix it, meaning, let's just get along. Let's just, do what's right. It can't be a Republican versus Democrat. The Democratic Party can no longer exist. The Democratic Party will not exist past December 31st of 2025 because it should not even be here, because after the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln shouldn't have gotten shot. Okay. He created the Freedmen's Bank. Okay. And the Freedmen's Bank was $8 million put aside in 1865 for the newly freed slave. So do $8 million in 1865 with interest. You're talking about trillions of dollars, trillions. And Bernard Henderson is still here. I must be entertaining you today, man. Give him a hand clap. He's still here. Love you. You know, my biggest fan. I'm going to make Bernard Henderson my biggest fan. He been here for 74 minutes. Love you. So listen. So just imagine if that never happened and we was able to, you know, grow. It wouldn't even be no race. It wouldn't be none of that. It wouldn't be no racism. It'll just be, you know, human beings just doing their thing, you know. But you got sick individuals who realize that, you know, if we was to do that, then the white race would be affected. OK, if we was to do that, the immigrant would have probably stayed in their country. And so this nation would probably be something different, because this nation, according to my understanding, is the promised land. Y'all brought us here. This is our promised land. So this promised land here in America, on earth as it is in heaven, our goal is to have on earth as it is in heaven, meaning this is going to be a heavenly, tranquil place. But we got to get the Democrats out the way for this to happen, because the Democrats, those your killers, your murderers, you know, your anti-Americans, your anarchists. You know, and when they claim fascists, when they, you know, say that, we got to stop this fascist, meaning they're communists. Literally, they're communists. And it's crazy, you know, but like I said, all things come to an end. So now we got to separate ourselves, because the Gavin Newsom vetoed reparations. And I bring reparations up because in the California state constitution, involuntary servitude is a thing. If it wasn't, then why do we have Prop 6 to end involuntary servitude? Okay. And now that Prop 6 did not pass, now all of a sudden they're spending billions of dollars to get Proposition 50 to pass. Is that the bread? And then now the federal government, the Democrats, is asking for $1.5 trillion just to open up the government for illegal migrants. I mean, could that have been the money utilized for, you see what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is we got to cut the wing, one wing off the bird. And right now the Republicans are in office. Okay, so we got to cut the left wing off, because the left wing is anti-American. The left wing wants to destroy America. So when you look at the federal officers fighting against individuals, they're not fighting against not one black person. So who are these white people? The same white people that fought in the Union against the Confederacy. Think about that. And you got individuals today calling the federal government fascist because they want to embrace communism, Marxism, socialism, which is the same thing. So, you know, the black man, and like I said, black woman, good luck to you. But the black man, we got to pull ourselves out of this equation and let these white folks handle their business. And from a projection perspective, when the Democratic Party is no longer, okay, so now we the people can step up and we'll cut a deal with the deal maker in terms of Donald Trump, because I'd be so jealous and envious, you know, not to a point where it affects me. But when I sit back and I see these foreign nationals roll up to the White House and they come out, you know, shake their hand, you know, do a little press conference. We're going to go in there and we're going to discuss some business. And he bring these African nations in and we'll stop them from warring and signing treaties and all that. And I'm sitting back saying, man, we're going to get our day. But when we get our day, it's going to be black men. It's going to be a black coalition. You know, the FBA, the foundational black Americans, the 5%ers, the Hebrew Israelites, the Jehovah's Witnesses. And when I say that, It's an organization of black human beings who are, do not want to be, pawns on the chessboard of the Democrats, because the Democratic Party, is the root causes is something so bad. The root causes is something so terrible. So when they sit back and say the party switched, that's impossible. The people switched, but the parties never switched. It's impossible. USC switched conferences. It's still USC. You could transfer to a different school. That school is still a school, but you're moving on. So I can understand a white conservative, who was a Democrat saying, you know what? I love God and I'm going to be a Republican because the Democratic Party, they want to kill babies with Planned Parenthood. They, be hanging and have public lynchings. If you look at the history, were those Republicans going to those public lynchings in Mississippi, Alabama, and the Deep South? No, they wasn't. The people switched, not the parties. So if you are a Democrat, you have aligned yourself with a party that's anti-American and will be willing to do whatever they need to do to bring this country down, and they are going to use you to do it. And then if it happens and you happen to die, you're just collateral damage, but they're going to still make it happen. But somewhere in that word, it says, we got to leave an inheritance to our children's children. And there's a lot going on right now, and the word says that I have never seen a righteous man forsaken, nor his seed beggeth bread. So if you are a righteous male or a righteous female, regardless of what the shutdown is doing, your children will not be concerned about bread, because they're going to eat, and they're going to eat well. And it's kind of strange when things go south. Black people seem to prosper. It's kind of strange. It is what it is. It is what it is. So listen, man, like I said, I guess I just have some good energy today because I was going to play some videos and all that, but I just needed to get that off my chest, and I appreciate all y'all that's on. Hit that like, hit that notification, hit that subscription, because we're going up. And then we're going to be on the lookout for our Twitch, be on the lookout for our TikTok, and be on the lookout for our Patreon. And once we figure that thing out, this is what, why here in the United States, you don't need to, go get a job if you got talent, because, you can make $1 million a month, streaming. You can make $1 million a month, just pretty much utilizing your talent. Because this is why when you go get a job, they make you the supervisor. You can't do your 8 and skate. You got to stay over because you're responsible for scheduling and all that. No, look in that mirror, figure out what you do best, and get out there and make it happen. But like I said, I had a whole plan for y'all, but I just had to let y'all know. And on day 22, this shutdown, Schumer shutdown, there is no point of return. The Democrats cannot come back from this, because their donors are crashing them out. They were forced to participate in the No Kings Parade, meaning no God. And these No King Parade, they claim fascist, but was funded by evildoers in high places and the Communist Party of America. Think about that. Think about that. It is what it is. So let me see what y'all got in these comments. The parties didn't switch. No, Valencia, it's impossible to switch. You could switch your mind and your heart, but you can't switch the original. Okay, just like I mentioned before when I first started this live stream here on YouTube, I mentioned a murderer who was convicted of a murder, life in prison, no possibility of parole. He switched his life around, but he's still a murderer. So the Democratic Party is still the party of slavery. The Democratic Party is still the party of Jim Crow. The Democratic Party is still the party of the KKK. The Democratic still the party of mass incarceration, 94 crime bill. And the Democratic Party has the worst cities in all of the red states. And with that being said, I thank you, Lyndon. I'm going to close with that. Speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. So I'll see y'all next time on A Better Black America TV here on YouTube. Peace out. Have an amazing day. Peace.